Archaeological discoveries that don't seem to fit into the framework of official science have long been exciting the minds of mankind. The media often reports on the most interesting ancient artifacts found by archaeologists, which causes the public to go into a discussion of the mysteries of mummies, mosaics, statues, or jewelry. Meanwhile, the media isn't so eager to cover the boring discoveries, since it seems that no one would be interested to hear about a lump of resin, a partially ruined page from some book, or a dead bee. But in fact, such discoveries can tell a lot about the ancient world. It is these finds that we'll be discussing in our episode today. Library in different languages. Egypt. Religious manuscripts aren't all that uncommon, but St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt has a unique library, one of the oldest in the world. There are 130 manuscripts known as palimpsests among the thousands of books there. A palimpsest is a manuscript where the original text has been erased in order to write a new text. This was done out of necessity in the 7th century. The spread of Islam throughout the Sinai Desert led to the isolation of the monks. When paper became scarce, they had to reuse old books. Since 2011, some 6,800 pages of the palimpsest have been photographed under special lighting to reveal the invisible text. The restored literature dates back to the 4th to 12th centuries. Among these amazing finds in previously known languages, there were 108 pages of new Greek poems and the oldest recipe attributed to the famous Greek physician Hippocrates. Even more priceless were the manuscripts in the rare, extinct languages of Caucasian Albanian and Christian Palestinian Aramaic. This discovery helped expand the meager vocabulary of the Caucasian Albanian, known only from a few inscriptions on stones found on the territory of modern Azerbaijan. Montecronio, Italy. Vessels and equipment containing traces of ancient wine aren't all that uncommon. The American researchers were caving in Italy when they found wine fermentation pots in a cave. They contained traces of tartaric acid. The pots were quite large, but nothing in them hinted that they could change the history of winemaking in Italy. However, the pots were found in Montecronio, off the coast of Sicily, which is an excavation site for the Copper Age, early 4th millennium BC. Prior to this discovery, it was believed the first winemaking on the Italian peninsula dated back to the Middle Bronze Age, about 1300 to 1100 BC. Cave glue, Germany. Strange clots have been found in caves in Germany for decades. Researchers have always known that ancient people used resin as an adhesive and sealant. However, these 200,000-year-old resin balls have been found in caves and on tools where Neanderthals lived. Recent research has led scientists to paint a completely new picture of this extinct human. It was previously believed that Neanderthals were mindlessly wasting their time, gratifying their primitive instincts, but now scientists believe they had a complex culture. The resin proves that they also invented the world's first glue, which was previously attributed to anatomically modern humans. Not only were Neanderthals ahead of humans in this high-tech skill, but they also created 3 complex ways to process birch bark resin. Homo sapiens only started using glue 70,000 years ago. Etruscan boat bees, Italy. A dead bee is unlikely to tell much about the past, but the bees found in an ancient Etruscan workshop had an amazing story to tell. About 2,500 years ago, a building in Milan burned down. When the archaeologists unearthed the remains of the workshop in 2017, they found exquisite honeycombs, fossilized bees, and honey. Tests showed that the honey was of a unique variety and came from semi-wild vines. The insects also fed on water lilies and other aquatic plants. Some of the pollen belonged to plants that didn't even belong to this area. Nectar from remote areas and aquatic plants meant that the bees were taken to the feeding area by boat. This testifies to the unusual beekeeping skills of the Etruscans. Pliny described how the villagers carried beehives far up the river during the night. When dawn came, the bees left the boat and returned later that day. After that, the hives were taken to the village of Ostiglia, also at night. The silos of Tel Tsaf, Israel. The tipping point when society becomes unequal can be found in a small, clay object. Tel Tsaf in the Jordan Valley of Israel was a prehistoric village that existed around 5200 to 4700 BC. In 2015, a clay vessel was found there. The unique artifact turned out to be a miniature copy of the large silos located nearby, of which only the foundations remained. Scientists used to think that everyone had about the same number of livestock at that time, and that the amount of food stored in the houses corresponded to the annual needs of each family. In other words, society was equal. But the sheer number of silos found in the valley suggests that the grain was harvested in different ways for different reasons. The silo model, which was found with other ritual artifacts, may indicate that food storage at Tel Tsaf was taking place based on political and religious reasons. Silos were a means of accumulating wealth because excess grain could provide someone with more power, money, and influence. The 7,200-year-old tiny clay model has forced experts to rethink the way prehistoric society was organized. Instruments in Majid Bibi, Australia. It would seem that drawing tools and stone axes are incompatible things, but those are the artifacts that have been found in the archaeological site in Majid Bibi in the Northern Territory of Australia. These are the oldest ochre crayons and stone axes in the world. The age of the artifacts changed the history of mankind in Australia. The indigenous people of Australia are considered to be the most ancient civilization in existence today. They were the creators of the discovered tools. Indigenous people were thought to have first landed on the Australian coast around 47,000 to 60,000 years ago. But Majid Bibi's toolkit proves that they appeared 18,000 years earlier, and even more so, they had a more developed level of tools than was previously believed. They also lived side by side with some representatives of the Australian megafauna that later went extinct. Lost architecture, Sudan. Archaeologists don't usually waste time looking at holes in rocks unless the holes are clearly ancient and artificial, which makes things much more interesting. Artificial holes were discovered when archaeologists were exploring the west bank of the Nile River. Located in the center of Sudan, the mysterious dents were made as far back as 5000 BC. Whoever made them used an unknown metal-free method. They were made in granite walls at a height of 1.3 to 3.2 meters. This would require an incredible effort. They were smooth inside, cylindrical in shape, had a diameter of 4 to 5 centimeters, and gradually narrowed down to a point. In a hypothetical attempt to reconstruct the unknown architecture based on the holes and the data from the surrounding area, scientists suggested it could have been some kind of residential structure which was stabilized by wooden support beams, the ends of which were inserted into these holes. Origin of Peruvian culture, Peru. The roots of Peru's complex ancient civilizations remained a mystery for decades. Experts still cannot agree on whether they originated from highland farmers or coastal communities. A recent study shows that the amazing cultures of Peru were born near the sea. 6-year-long excavation works at the ruins of Huaca Prieta off of the coast of Peru have been partially focused on what most people would consider boring: the baskets. They were hand-woven almost 15,000 years ago and are among the oldest baskets that have ever been found in the New World. Thus, they offer valuable insight into the cultural aspects of these early inhabitants of Peru. One would expect them to be practical and simple baskets, but what the archaeologists found was clearly innovative. Instead of simple things, they found fashionable items. Ancient craftsmen used a huge range of materials, including dyed cotton, which required complex preparation. Such baskets indicated that there was a highly developed society in Huaca Prieta that was previously unknown to us. Plimpton 322, Iraq. In the early 1900s, an unassuming clay tablet was discovered in Iraq. Its surface was divided into 4 columns filled with cuneiform script. The 3,700-year-old Babylonian artifact bore a series of designs called Pythagorean numbers. For almost a century, mathematicians couldn't understand why Plimpton 322 was created. In 2017, scientists discovered the purpose of the tablet. It turned out to be the most accurate trigonometric table in the world. Remarkably, it also preceded the invention of trigonometry by the Greeks by millennia. Catholics in Jamestown, USA. As you may know, the English settlers of Jamestown in the United States were Protestants, and they didn't like Catholics very much. They even executed one of their leaders after learning he was a Catholic spy. It was obviously dangerous to be a Catholic in Jamestown. For this reason, the archaeologists who explored the settlement found it strange that there were so many Catholic rosary beads there. The Anglican Church was a new concept, so some have suggested that rosaries could have been the transitional relics between the old and new belief systems. In 2015, another discovery showed the opposite. There was a previously unknown Catholic community in Jamestown. Beneath the town's Protestant church was the tomb of Gabriel Archer. He died somewhere between 1608 and 1610, and someone had placed a silver box on his coffin. This hexagonal artifact, which turned out to be a reliquary, contained things that were common in Catholic burials, bone fragments and a vessel. Although this is just a guess, it is possible that there were Catholics hiding in Jamestown. The King of Spain wanted to take over the New World and had spies everywhere in London. Jamestown was fortified against Spanish invasion from the sea, but the king may have intended to take the colony from within.